I have a certain way that I start people who, especially the ones who haven't, who don't have much experience, and I have a certain set way that I can kind of introduce them to chords and simple voicings and things like that. Yes. One of the very interesting things that I've discovered is that when that I kind of learned a lot about music and about how to teach by doing it. You know, because when I first started teaching, I didn't come really from the academic world. I came from I'm a piano player. I was a jazz piano player, and so I could do a lot of things, but I didn't really know exactly how to explain it. And people, by people asking me, how did you do that? You know, I'd play something and say, how did you do that? And well, I don't know, you know. And then but as time went on, I started figuring out how I did it and what it was called, and so then I feel that I became a better teacher by thinking about those kind of things. I always play for them, and whenever possible, when you have two pianos, I like the students who are more advanced, we play together, and that's always a very good thing for me and for them. I ask them to give them certain assignments. I ask them to work on certain tunes that we discuss. I feel that they should do some transcribing as a kind of an ear training exercise. And I ask them to practice, which helps. As far as gigs are concerned, some of the students here do go out and play some gigs. And that's, of course, I always say that playing with other musicians is the ultimate way, is the best way, and playing along with records and playing with other musicians are the two best ways of advancing as a musician, as a jazz musician. Anybody that you play with, you have to fit into because they are the ones who are dictating the type of music that you're playing. So you have to be adjusted. You have to adjust. Playing with Arnett is completely different than playing with Clark Terry. I listen primarily. I listen to jazz and classical music. I grew up as a classically trained pianist, and I still love classical music. I like to play it. It's very good for your hands. It's good for your mind, and so I like listening to it. I'm very impressed by these fantastic concert pianists. And I love great jazz, you know, because the beautiful thing about jazz is the fact that you can play, within a framework, you can create and express yourself any way that you want, and there's no limit to the things that you can do. So that's the beautiful thing about jazz, which to me is the biggest difference between that and classical music. In classical music, I think you can interpret a piece, but you're always playing a particular set of notes, you know, and I think it's very different in that respect. Actually, I find that young people in general are a little bit more narrow. Their vision is a little bit more narrow, and as you get older, you seem to encompass a greater, you know, a lot of more different things. Although I think that today's world has also changed a lot since I was young, and there's so much more music that's accessible to everyone today through the computers and records and CDs, and there's all this world music and all this kind of stuff. So I think that people today do generally get a wider variety of sounds that they can hear. Well, I think that because of the fact that I've had so many experiences, and it gives you a greater pool of knowledge to draw from. I guess I could say that. The other thing is that I think that as an individual, I think that I've left myself somewhat, I think I can say this, that I've left myself open to listening to new things. I think one of the dangers that people have is that they come from a certain era. Like I grew up in the bebop era, and they stay in that era. They think that only that music is really good, you know, and they don't like any other thing. I'm not naming any names, but I've spoken to people who have that kind of an outlook. But I myself feel I've been able to allow myself to be influenced by more modern players. I listen to the newer guys, the younger guys, and I get very impressed because they're some very talented young players, and so I feel that my influences are from a wide variety. They all have this great love of the music, and they were all great players. They were all great players on their instrument. You know, they obviously spent a lot of time working on their instrument because people like Clark Terry, Dexter Gordon, Chet Baker, whoever, Buddy DeFranco. I played with all these different people. They were all, you know, great players on their instruments. And you hear people today, it's the same thing. You hear Keith Jarrett or Joe Lovano. I mean, these guys are fantastic instrumentalists, and they are also creative. So I've always told students, and some people have the, in my opinion, the mistaken idea that if you have too much technique, it can take away from your creativity. And I've always stressed that that's not, in my opinion, that's not the case at all. I feel that the more facility you have on your instrument, the more command you have of your instrument, the more able you are to express whatever it is you want to express. I think it's a combination of all the people that I play with, all the experiences that I've had, all the, and the other thing that I think one of the ways that I really learned a lot was the fact that I, at a very early time in my jazz training, so to speak, I got the opportunity to play every night with a famous musician, Buddy DeFranco. I was on tour with him for 9 months, and we played 6 nights a week for 9 months. And during that, and I was very young, and I was green at that time, but because of that experience, I mean, I learned a lot in that. I learned a lot of tunes, and I learned how to play in a band, you know. It was just a fantastic experience. He never said a word to me. He never told me one thing. It just came through osmosis, just by playing. I mean, he might have said, well, I think you should play this chord on this particular thing, but I mean, he never said you should, you know, and he never tried to coach me about playing. Really? Yeah. And in fact, that's something that I've found about almost everybody. That I've never played with anybody who really tried to tell me how to play.